Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast. I am here with Anne, who has kindly agreed to chat with us about her experience on the Mandarin Blueprint method and learning Chinese in general. And this particular case study is a little bit unique because Anne has actually written a fair bit about her experience in a much more elucidated way than many people that we talk to here at Mandarin Blueprint. So, while I normally would ask a set of sort of somewhat templated questions, we'll kind of have a different type of conversation today with Anne. So before we get into your blog post here, this great blog post called Learning Mandarin Chinese Efficiently with Mandarin Blueprint over at, and is it Giles or Giles?
Giles.
Giles, okay, AnneGiles.com. That's ANNEGILES.com. And you can check out Learning Mandarin Chinese Efficiently with Mandarin Blueprint. I'll leave the link in the show notes, of course. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your journey to deciding to learn Mandarin in the first place and why you want to learn Mandarin.
I would love to do that. I want to say first, thank you so much for what you and Luke have done. As I was saying before we started, I felt quite moved to see you in person. I was all alone in lockdown learning Chinese, and you and Luke were my everyday, all day company. And so, I'm getting choked up a little bit. Your company meant so much to me. And so to see you in real life is just validating and inspiring. So thank you for that. Let's see. Yeah, so I'd love to tell this piece of the story that I haven't told. I live in Blacksburg, Virginia, and Virginia Tech is here. And when I was a teenager, bridge was played at the Squire Student Center. And I played bridge with people from Taiwan. And they were fabulous to me, so kind. So I got very interested in Taiwan. I went to college, I studied Chinese history, and just started dreaming of seeing Oracle bone script for myself in China. So, it's all this kind of history thing. So I went to graduate school. I took one semester of Chinese, and that didn't work out. That program didn't work out. So I came back, became a teacher. So I took one semester of Mandarin Chinese 40 years ago, and could remember how to count and how to say hello. And for some reason, I remember Tai Gui. So and that's all I remember. And so I considered myself a beginner when I started, I don't know, just before the pandemic, I started thinking about returning to learning Mandarin Chinese, and I'm not sure why, really. An intellectual challenge. I'm 62 years old. There is, sort of an urgency to keep the mind and the brain active. My poor father has dementia, and that has really made me thoughtful about what I want to do and be, how I want to use my mind for the next 20 years. I too may develop it. So, I've got this window. How will I spend my time? And learning Mandarin Chinese was what came to me. So I looked and looked and looked for how to learn Mandarin Chinese. There are so few materials for adults. I don't have children. I don't cook. There's very little in current materials for me. And I heard an interview with Luke on You Can Learn Chinese. And that's when I learned about Mandarin Blueprint and looked into Mandarin Blueprint. And I have been using the system now 4 months.
So we had a little bit of an internet drop there, so I'll just repeat my last question. So I was just asking, what was it about Mandarin Blueprint that caught your attention at the beginning and kept you interested?
I appreciate the question. So I think my life right now, my intellectual life right now is more creative than it has been in months, maybe years, because of Mandarin Blueprint. Mandarin Blueprint asks me to think of my story, my history, So it's in the places, my autobiographical places. Then I'm asked to create with my own imagination the Hanzi, the character, in my heart, in my mind, in my story. I just find it sort of a miraculous, creative and intellectual experience. So it doesn't surprise me that I've never seen anything like it. And I am a writer, I'm a teacher, I'm a counselor. I've had a rich, beautiful intellectual life. This is novel. So it makes sense to me that you've made it through the patent pending process. It's it's an invention and it's a system. And so sort of it fits with the human brain, it fits with the human experience. I think it's extraordinary. So you ask what kept me going. It it works. It works on a pragmatic level, but it works on a sort of a higher level, an enlightened, humane, human level. That's just it's beautiful, it's effective, it's compelling. I continue.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah,
You knew
no,
that, I bet. You kind of knew that.
well, I certainly know that it's very human, because it's all about just finding the parts of your brain that you know are already connected with the knowledge. You just need to add something to it. So like that's how I've always sort of thought of it, is what the process of learning is in general is to find what you already know and connect the unknown to what you already know. I mean, there's no way to have an unknown that's an island and suddenly becomes known disconnected from everything else you've already experienced. So essentially using your imagination is a way to quickly create connections in some way. So, I imagine that there are, if I were to get down to the neurobiology of it, and again, I'm just speculating here, I'm no neurobiologist, but I would just imagine that all of those action potentials that shoot electricity across our neurons through the axon, and then they build on these myelin sheaths over the axon to create a more robust, it's like the rubber around a wire that keeps the electricity in. You keep building these things, and if you are already attached to a set of neurons that are associated with, say, a memory of the first time you ever set up a bank account or something, and then you're learning the Chinese word for bank account in that moment, then it's just so much easier. There's like more like electrical force behind that to weld in new information, right? And so it's just a matter of searching your brain. And I think that it's weird because creating it is simultaneously gratifying and I'm glad that it's helping people, but it's also kind of like there's this weird sort of disappointment that happens, in the sense that I wish this were more widespread knowledge of how to learn this way. Luckily there are people out there who are advocating for it, memory champions like Dominic O'Brien, or the various people in that field who are trying to make sure that people know, hey, you're way more, there's way more potential in your brain just waiting dormant for you if you know how to navigate it. And so it's almost like we're kind of just coaches about navigation through that sea of your mind. And the other thing about it that's so clear to me is that neither Luke or myself, we're just normal guys. We're not geniuses or anything like that. We're just guys who said to ourselves, okay, there's ways to learn characters, and so that involve these techniques, these visualization techniques, and navigating your own brain. And so could we apply this to further layers of the language and keep building up, go from characters into words and into grammar by getting comprehensible input? And everybody knows about comprehensible input. That's not a thing that is all that novel in the language learning community. It was just a question of how to get Chinese there, because you don't know. I mean, like, read Chinese to get better at the language through comprehensible input. It's like, how are you going to read these squiggles? They don't, it's not like English or French or something. You learn French, okay, it's not the same as English, but at least they have an alphabet, right? So anyway, So that's, I'm glad to hear that. And also I knew that you were aware of comprehensible input from your blog post. So um, yeah, but anyway, so you were talking about those connections there. One of the things you kind of mentioned, a few things that stuck out to you. One of the things you just brought up, which I feel like I forget about sometimes, is just the advantage of an online course. So how have you found it being, that you can just go online and do the course?
Interesting question. I am a counselor. I had a private practice. I had an office. I saw clients in the office, and then the pandemic happened. So I had to close my office because we couldn't meet face to face. So I
Mm,
had to take pretty much my life online, my
mm.
work and my life.
So many
And
people have to do that. Yeah.
yes, yeah, I'm not alone in this. And so, my theory is that everything got backed into a corner,
Mm,
and belief-based practices versus science-based, reality-based, fact-based processes got backed into the corner. And the belief-based practices, um, kind of sold with charm, didn't produce results. And so a lot of people got embarrassed.
hmm.
So everything had to be online. So I tried many, many programs, courses, approaches, apps, everything was electronic. So I don't know if, oh yeah. So the thing about Mandarin Blueprint is the videos are a minute.
Yeah.
I could do cats, take care of my father, clean house, and then see clients. Oh, I've got a moment. Let me go into Mandarin Blueprint and make a movie.
Yeah.
And many of the other systems require almost like coding. Go in, do it. If you're interrupted, you lose your train of thought and have to start over. Not with Mandarin Blueprint. I didn't lose, it wasn't painful to be broken away. I could get in, do it, and get out over and over and over again.
Hmm.
And it, these were some lonely times. I was awake at odd times, and Mandarin Blueprint was there. So, yes, every online course is available. What's the difference? The brevity, the
Mm.
efficiency. And again, the systematic approach. I got a lot of my needs met all at once, efficiently.
Right, right. And so there's another element to our course, which does distinguish us from other online courses, which is that we've tried our best to facilitate the community elements of the course so that people don't feel as though, I mean, sure, you're watching a recording of a video, but we want people to feel that we're there, not just us, but also all the other people who have come before. So there's a lot of people paying it forward in terms of leaving comments that won't necessarily help them in that moment, although it might help them to write out their scene or something like that, but they leave stuff for other people. So tell me about your experience of that element of the course, the sort of more community-based elements.
Someone reached out to me from the community. I posted some distress about something. I can't remember what it was. Oh
Mm,
yeah, we know what it was.
probably flashcards, right?
It would be that, yes.
Yeah.
And someone reached out to me from the community, and that invitation was lovely. And so I've participated in the community. I participated in the community a great deal to start, and then my momentum. I had some momentum, and then participated less. In the community forum, I
Mm,
participate actively in the lessons. This is unusual. Each of the lessons has a comment section. And so
right.
people leave comments on lessons. And so like if I'm learning a character and it's not coming to me, I can scroll through other people's ideas, and it's like a buffet, and I just
Hmm.
fill my plate with items from the buffet. And so synergy. It creates synergy, creative
Right.
synergy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's glorious from our perspective because we don't have to come up with all the creative ideas. Like, we obviously like to give people a starting off point. And, for example, I'm in the process of expanding the course. And so we're still the same basic system for learning characters. So we have to pick new props to represent character components. And while I do insist that I come up with at least one idea, I know that I only really have to come up with one idea, because what will happen naturally is that people will keep suggesting ideas, and we might even do it ahead of time. So we might even make a spreadsheet and just say to the people on the course, hey, here are the upcoming props for the advanced course. Here's your trigger idea. Add in whatever else you want, and then we'll put it into the course when it comes out. And just having that resource is so powerful. It's like, we can just set up a number of trailheads, and then we can just let other people start down those trails, which is great. And it means that the brain behind the course is not just two people, it's thousands.
And yes, and research on learning supports that hypothesis. Writing helps. And so I add into my learning system writing. So I am currently writing small, short dialogues using sort of psychologically minded content, adding in, and I keep track of the words in Mandarin Blueprint, and I log those onto I'm putting it on a blog and logging those into the blog post. So giving us the spreadsheet of props will orient us to the prop.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if we write our own little, hey, you can use this, it enhances learning. So I hear that it's efficient work-wise, but it's also efficient learning-wise for your learners, for your students.
Yeah,
it's a great idea. I can't wait to see the sheet. I hope I get to look and add one.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's we were able to do that a little bit with the intermediate course as well, which has been awesome. And the other thing that's so exciting about the course in general is that it's constantly growing. Like, there's no spot that has to well, one, it's constantly growing because people are leaving their suggestions all the time, but there are constant branches that you could have. So we're finishing building up the trunk in terms of the characters, because I would say that the characters are the things that have the most fractal-like branches you can take from them. But at any point, we can choose to focus on a certain area of the language and just expand a bit more. And so it's one of those things that it's hard for me to ever imagine that Mandarin Blueprint will be done, because it's like, there's certainly a point where we'll probably decide there's no need to teach any more characters because the return on investment you're going to get for them is too low. But it's hard to imagine that at any point we would say, okay, we've covered everything, because it's just, you just can't. It's the language is too, even Chinese people don't know the entirety of the language. So it's very exciting in that sense. So how have you found some of the elements of the course? Like, for example, the Henza movie method itself, more specifically, like the different elements to it. How long did it take before you felt like you understood how the method works? Because it's about like a 7 or 8 step process to learn each character. So it can be intimidating for people sometimes. So my question is, how did you find doing that, and how long did it take you to get it down?
I don't know. I have memorized, I made a tone house in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I envisioned a long house. Entrance is 1, kitchen is 2. I drew it. I drew it on a little piece of paper, and I had to look at that. I had to make an analog list of all of my locations. I found a place with the initials, and I keep track. So it took a while, and I still have to look at the papers. You see how they have cat prints on them and tea stains, but but I would say not long. It started to make sense, and as you know, I have made an analog flashcard system for myself, and sort of reverse engineered the system so that I can fit it on a half sheet, all the pieces. So I understand it. I was able to understand it well enough to sort of imagine the napkin that you and Luke wrote the idea on and put it on a sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your original conception.
Right. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you
That's kind
understand?
of
Do you know what I'm saying?
sure. Yeah. No.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, because the Hanson movie method could be intimidating for people sometimes because it's like there's all these people and places and objects, and we're saying imagine them moving around. So we're always curious how people do with that, but these days, if you're approaching a new character, now that you understand how the system works and you get, okay, people represent the pinyin initial and places represent the pinyin final and the objects represent the components and how they interact, it represents the character meaning. On average, how long does it take you to learn a character?
To create a movie about a character is minutes.
Yeah.
Learning, I keep looking for I have heard this over and over again, that it takes 30 exposures to learn a new piece of information.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't find I've heard speakers say it, but I haven't.
Like that too. Yeah.
You too. Yeah. So when you ask me how long does it take to learn it, well, I haven't had my 30 exposures yet, but it takes me just minutes to create the movie, and I'm much more likely to be able to remember it and recognize it as a result of creating the movie than if I hadn't.
Right. Yeah, I suppose you could think of it like that in the sense that we, obviously we use the SRS flashcards, or in your case, the analog flashcards, which give you extra exposures. But then ultimately our goal is to get you to see the character in lots of different contexts, at which point you're then getting more rapid exposures to the character because you might see it come up several times. It's also why we focus on the most highly frequent characters first, because you'll have the most opportunities to solidify them. And there's this sort of meta thing that happens where by the time 1,000 words and 600 characters, you're going to start learning less frequent words and characters. But because you understand how the language generally structures sentences and generally structures paragraphs and things like that, it becomes easier to maybe require fewer exposures to a new word before you get it down, because it doesn't take as much. You're sort of running it through. There's like a meta exposure you've already given yourself. So it's definitely the way anybody learning any language, you have to learn the most frequent words first. It's this basic thing, but it's surprising how often learning materials will focus on things that are too topic oriented, which is understandable, but like people will make stuff that they'll say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to go to the hospital in Italian. And it's like, okay, fine. But that's going to include a lot of things that if you had approached Italian from, I'm going to learn the 1,000 most common words in Italian, then learning about the hospital is better for after you've done that. Like, it's like, it's not, people are too topical oftentimes at the beginning, and topic is more of an intermediate thing.
Yes. And that's, that was my frustration. Going to school, I'm not. Cooking, I don't. Those topics were uninteresting to me.
Yes, and so much in Chinese is like about being in class. Yeah, that happens all the time.
And I'm not. Yeah. And I don't have children, and they're not. So I felt left out. And maybe that's another thing that, I have mentioned this in my blog post. Our Surgeon General has argued that we have a loneliness epidemic in the US. And I thought the pandemic, backed loneliness into a corner also. Sure. And so, you and Phil in the videos, asynchronous contact with people in the program was, very, I felt that I do feel a sense of belonging. And so when I heard Luke say, people are starting to refer to themselves as MBers, I laughed because I hadn't used that term yet, but I do feel a sense of belonging. Is it a community? My daydream is that more people in my locale use Mandarin Blueprint so we can have a users group, because I would love to. I love reading the written comments, but what if we met together and acted out our movies, or, explained our movies, did charades with our movies to teach each other, another exposure and in-person exposure to this method. I just think it would be delightful.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I think that has a lot of potential. And, I often think that, I've often wanted to, this isn't a thing I'll probably do anytime soon, but I've often wanted to like have a, what do you call it? Like a not safe for work community forum for people who want to share certain scenes that are a little bit racy, because like we don't put anything that's not family friendly into ours, but there's plenty that you could do, and many of them are really funny. Like I've had a number of scenes that I've thought of and I thought, well, I could never share this. But I thought that would be fun to make like a community forum section that's just like, here you can share your scenes that aren't, you wouldn't want to put on the course or whatever, but we'd have to have like a password to get into it or something. But that could be fun. You could do that if you were in
in person and not recording.
Yeah, exactly.
Not on the internet. I think it would be.
So that sounds like a great idea. I mean, I'm with you. I hope that we can get to the point where there's enough Mandarin Blueprint users. I mean, I'm sure that in big cities that's probably already the case, but if we can get to the point where it's super popular, but that's how it goes. We're all on the journey. But
anniversary party in Chengdu.
Yeah, that's maybe at some point.
See, or a conference or a convention. A gathering of MBers.
Yeah, exactly. I always thought that, we're more, the people on our course, I think we were talking to a person we were hiring to help us do some writing for various, ads or, blog posts. And he asked us, he said, well, what do you call the people in your course? And I said, members. They're members is the right way to think of it, because it's not really like, their clients, their customers, and it sounds like we just sold you a widget and said, see ya. It's more of a community and a members type of place. And I mean, we're doing our best to try to keep it so that we can maintain that element of it. We recently had a very good review of the course done from Mezzo Guild, which is a very popular online language learning blog. And it was interesting because it was a good review, but it was also a review that I could tell was basically just like, I don't know, they read our sales page and sort of maybe checked out a little bit of the free trial, but they were saying, and this is kind of the struggle of running an online course, is that like they were saying, it's a little bit expensive, compared to the competitors. And I was like, yeah, but there's not that level of interaction though, and there's only two of us, so that if we made it really cheap, then it's like the sacrifice that we would be making would be that we wouldn't have enough time to get to everybody. You know what I mean? Like it's just so.
So I have sort of a radical view. Results, outcomes. I want results and outcomes. That's the number one criterion.
Mm-hmm.
So other people can talk about other programs and systems.
Mm-hmm.
Does it work?
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I have attempted to take the HSK exams, even though they're difficult to take now with the lockdown. But I need results, and the HSK is pretty much all we've got to measure results. Sometimes in the case studies you ask what might be to add. I wonder if just an occasional measure of progress would be, this is my work. I'd be glad to, give you, even create a prototype just to see. But like if you ask the same things over and over again, so you have, pre-test and then you can measure. Anyway, I just think that would be, sort of an internal measure of progress. But
yeah, sure. I mean, we obviously keep track of how many words you're learning and the different word types and all of that. But we also are going to be more explicit about the HSK levels. Now, the HSK has just updated, so we're still in the process of updating the course to make sure that we cover everything for the new HSK levels. But because we're doing that, we're going to be a bit more explicit about, okay, here's the point where you've seen all of the HSK 2, 1, 2, 3, and so forth material, which is at least one metric that's in the real world in terms of you could pass the HSK 3 now or whatever. So so that's a good piece of feedback.
Yeah, and
Um,
well, and you know, and in real life results, for me, I want to be able to talk about my feelings and thoughts. And I want to
mhm.
be able to understand what other people share about their feelings and thoughts. I want to be able to talk on the realm of in the realm of ideas.
Yep.
So, you know, if I'm with someone who speaks Chinese and they're sharing their minds and hearts, I need to be able to understand that. And
Yep.
I think I can do that now better after 4 months with Mandarin Blueprint than I could when I was learning Zuo Fan.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's great. And by the way, I feel that Chinese is a very good language at expressing emotion and psychological states. It's got a lot of different words for various, emotional states and attitudes, and it's really great in that way. And so I'm sure that you'll continue to enjoy those conversations as you keep improving. Um, all right. Well, I guess we've covered a lot of ground today, and I think that everybody should be sure to check out your blog post because you go into some more about the course and also your personal experiences that led up to why you believed in the course and why also you're seeing results now. But as just a final thing to wrap up, perhaps you could just explain why or why not? I think I know the answer, but why or why not you would recommend Mandarin Blueprint, and then we could finish up with that.
Outcomes, outcomes.
Yeah.
If you want, you know, if people want to learn how to speak Mandarin Chinese, read it and write it, if they really want to make Mandarin Chinese their own, I recommend Mandarin Blueprint. Otherwise, it's just bits and pieces. But this is a system,
Hmm.
humane, science-based, innovative. That's why it's human and humane, and it works.
Excellent. Well, that's a ringing endorsement, and we really appreciate it. And we really appreciate all of your contributions to the course. As you get through it and get to later sections of the course, maybe after you finish the intermediate course, we can get back on a call again and see how you're doing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I
Thanks.
appreciate you more than I can say.